This is chapter 10 of The Chocolate Touch. We're on page 101. And do you see the for sale sign? I wonder what's for sale. I see all those broken, maybe not broken bottles, but just bottles and cans and junk hanging around. I don't know. Dragging along and thinking of all the dreadful things that had happened, John had walked about halfway home when he heard the cheery voice of his father. "Hello, hello," called Mr. Midas, crossing over from the other side of the street. He was on his way home from the station. "You left the party rather early, didn't you? What?" Mr. Midas had just seen the patches of streaks of chocolate that were drying on John's face and on his clothes. "Good gracious," he said. "No wonder you left the party early. How did that happen?" John burst into tears. It had all been so awful, but now he could tell his father about his terrible day. He stopped crying and only sniffed a little now and then as he told the whole story. About taking the coin to the candy store, about buying the box that had turned out to have only one chocolate in it, about the toothpaste, about breakfast, the gloves, the silver dollar, the pencil, the lunch, the trumpet, and finally the apple ducking water. "You mean to tell me they really all turned to chocolate?" Mr. Midas asked. "You're sure you didn't imagine some of this?" "Oh, no," John assured him. "Well," Mr. Midas said, still looking doubtful, "we're only a couple of blocks from that candy store of yours. Not that I've ever noticed one there. Suppose we stroll over and ask the man whether his chocolates always do strange things to people." "It's on the next corner," John said, recognizing some of the houses on the side street. "Not the next house, not the next house, not the next," he said, "but—" John's voice faded into silence. The corner where he had found the candy store was nothing now but an empty lot. Flat, open ground littered with a pile of rusty tin cans and broken bottles around a splintery old sign saying, "For sale." Now we know what the chapter was about. Said Mr. Midas, frowning anxiously at John. "I think we better pay a visit to Dr. Cranium before we go home." "That's where the store was, though," John protested, beginning to cry again. He had shed more tears in that one day, it seemed, and certainly eaten more chocolate than in all the other days of his life put together. "I know it was." Dr. Cranium was a busy man. As luck would have it, however, he was able to see Mr. Midas and John almost at once. "Well, well, 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 well," said Dr. Cranium. "And how are we getting along now, John? Have we cut down on our candy, eh?" "How do you do?" John responded dully. "Apparently he's had a bad day, Dr. Cranium," Mr. Midas said. "Trouble at school, you know, and a little accident at a birthday party. What I'm worried about is that he keeps saying that everything he puts into his mouth turns to chocolate." "No more than a nursery fantasy, I'm sure," Dr. Cranium said to Mr. Midas. "Well, John," he went on, looking down with a smile, "suppose you tell me in your own words what the matter seems to be." "Everything I put into my mouth turns to chocolate," John explained. "Everything I eat and everything I drink changes into chocolate. I'm thirsty, and I'm getting a pain, a bad one, I think." Dr. Cranium sighed patiently and invited John to open his mouth and say, "Ah." "Ah," John said. Dr. Cranium peered into John's mouth briefly and gave a low whistle of surprise. "This chocolate eating simply must stop." He went to a supply cabinet. "I don't think there's any time to be lost," he told Mr. Midas. "I'm going to give the boy some of my own special compound, Dr. Cranium's elixir. I call it Never Fails." Dr. Cranium selected a large bottle from one of the cabinet's crowded shelves. He removed the top from the bottle. He got a spoon from another shelf. He filled the spoon with an oily, greenish, yellowish medicine that had yellowish, reddish lights glinting in it. "It doesn't taste very pleasant," Dr. Cranium warned John in a pleasant tone of voice, "but I'm sure it'll do the trick. Clear the stomach and you clear the mind. That's what I always say." Dr. Cranium offered John the brimful spoon, which means the brim is the edge, is full to the brim. "Must I?" John asked his father. "I know it'll turn into chocolate." "Go on," Mr. Midas nodded encouragingly. "Drink it down." John took the spoon between his lips. The medicine turned to chocolate. The spoon turned to chocolate. John choked and sputtered, and chocolate syrup spurted from his mouth. Dr. Cranium dropped the spoon in alarm. When it struck the white tiled floor, the chocolate handle snapped into several pieces. "Mercy," said Dr. Cranium. "I've never seen anything like it. The boy's whole system seems to be so chocolatified that it chocolatifies everything it touches." After he had recovered somewhat, the doctor went on, I believe that this must be an unprecedented case of, chocolatitis. I shall call it Cranium's disease. I shall want to make an exhaustive study of the child. I think John has had enough excitement for one day, Mr. Midas said. Now, let's go to our text-to-self reading log. If you don't have it, pause the video and come back with your pencil. So we are on day 3, and I put the chocolate touch. Make sure you're capitalizing again, the and touch, first and last words of the title, and any big words in the middle, which there's only one, chocolate. So today, 2 things happened that you might relate to. One is his dad doesn't quite believe him. You ever had, you've been telling the truth and somebody doesn't quite believe you? One time when I was in 2nd grade, the girl behind me was cheating on her math. I didn't know it because she was sitting behind me, but she was copying all my answers. Well, then when we both turned in our papers, the teacher said, one of you's cheating, and she thought it was me. And I told her I didn't cheat. But she said, well, you're both going to have to do this math paper over. And I was really upset because I didn't cheat. So that was my remembering when somebody really didn't believe me when I had told the truth. The other thing is you might relate to when John went to the doctor. Maybe you'd relate to, you didn't want to go to the doctor and they gave you some icky medicine to take. Maybe you relate to that. Or maybe you relate to the very end where maybe mom or dad or somebody else knew that you'd had a very hard day. And even though, like, this doctor wanted to do more tests on John and he wanted to name the disease after himself, the dad was sympathetic. He said, we need to go home. He's had a very hard day. Maybe you relate to that when somebody was really sympathetic to you. Maybe they were kind to you when you were having a bad day. So draw out your text-to-self experience. What were you thinking? And then make sure you put everything away for tomorrow. This is Wednesday.